All right. So, like I said, this is my first international speaking gig. Hopefully, you find my talk on marketing WordPress stuff fairly helpful. It's geared to a little bit of product, a little bit of services type of WordPress people. So it's for anyone who's in this sort of early stage product or service cycle, specifically in the WordPress ecosystem. You might find marketing difficult. Usually when I talk to people about marketing or about business in general, I often run polls just to keep a pulse on what I should talk about on my podcast. I'll always ask about things like, is it product creation? Is it finding talent? Is it sales? Is it, running the actual business, or is it marketing? Like, what are the most challenging pieces? And for most people, it's marketing, which I would imagine is also a little bit of sales in there too, when you pull back the curtain. So my approach is the approach that I've used for well over a decade, running a business, and even still today with Matterport and Pagely. So I hope you find it useful. This sort of concept. This is the first time I've also used a Canva presentation. I've never done it before, and I'm specifically only picked it because there is a literal animated GIF of a handshake happening here. This is a concept I have called the digital handshake. So this is taking that split-second moment of meeting someone in person and turning that into your own personalized digital handshake. This is something that's evolution, not revolutionary. So let me just set the stage for you. I grew up in the car business. I sold cars all my life. My family owned a couple of car dealerships growing up. Hopefully that didn't lose too many people in the audience. But I grew up in small business setting, selling cars, and we weren't this massive. I don't know what it's like maybe like in the UK or in the European regions, but there are some really big car dealers over here in the US, and they're high pressure sales. They take your keys and don't give it back until you close the deal. We were never like that. We were family owned. People who worked for us, it was their only job for decades, right? They people who worked for us, it was the first job they ever got. 40 years in working with our business before we sold it off back in 2007 ish. So when I was selling cars, a huge thing was shaking somebody's hand. They walk onto the lot. You get to learn a lot about somebody. And I know that many of you that are agency owners or consultants can probably relate to this, especially if you're meeting people in person. There's a pretty strong dynamic there when you can be in person with people. And it's come 360 in the world we live in today. Handshakes might even be illegal moving forward, but there was so much to be said for having that handshake. And I think we can do the same thing, but with our digital presence, blogging, podcasting, YouTube, everything that we have digitally to market ourselves, I think can represent this digital handshake. And it's something that is going to evolve over time. And I think that when people say they're afraid of marketing or that marketing is challenging, it's because they're trying to bite off too much than that they can chew at the moment. But the one underlining thread, I think, in a lot of us, I can't see any of you, but raise your hand if this is true, it's confidence, right? And listen, I was always, the short, fat guy and growing up, and my friends were all basketball players and sports players. And growing up, there was always a innate confidence issue, right? Growing up in the car business quickly changed that. That quickly changed the confidence. When you start to hear, no, I don't want to buy, or no, this is not the right vehicle for me, and then that transcended into running an agency and selling products, like you start to get a thicker skin through the practice of selling and pitching your product and marketing your product. So it's important that you build some confidence and understand that you have the best product in the world. This is purpose built to solve the problems of your customer. If you're building a product, it's purpose built to solve this issue. If you're selling a service, you're there to solve somebody's problems, and you should feel confident in that, right? This shouldn't be something that it allows you to be too timid. And the second half of this is it's profitable, sustainable, and people love it. So sometimes we get wrapped up. I know when I first started my agency, it was not profitable. Like we were losing money, or I was making absolutely no money. I think I started my agency when Facebook came out, and we had this package for $50 a month. We'd manage your Facebook page. Ridiculous, right? You'd make no money. was not sustainable. People loved it because it was cheap, but it was not profitable. It was not sustainable. And very important. This is all going to translate into your marketing. So it's confidence without arrogance. You don't have to feel like, sometimes people can conflate the two, especially in sales. So confidence is not arrogance, or you shouldn't lean in that direction. And helpful is not naive, right? You want to be confident and helpful. The people coming to you to buy your product, to learn about your product, and the marketing and the messaging that you put out should have some confidence, and it should help people. Okay, you don't want to get taken advantage of, and you don't want to come off too strong. And the other thing I think is very important is purpose and opinion. Like, why do you do what you do? I mean, anybody who's an agency owner or consultant out there can probably relate to this. When customers come to you, like, they don't have a website. They've never been online before. You start working with them. They say, I don't even know where to begin. You say, well, we're going to start with at least a homepage and an about page. Why did you get into business? And you can tell the people who have run traditional businesses for decades, or if not years, they're stumped. They don't know how to talk about themselves. They don't know how to unearth that storyline. And it's vitally important for those of us who compete in this digital landscape. What is your purpose and what is your opinion? And don't be afraid to share it, because in the worlds of Amazons and Apples and Googles, these are all massive companies, and this is that digital handshake, that purpose, that opinion. That's what's going to build the trust that we need to market and close deals and get more customers. So I have this purpose/opinion, I guess you could call it, is I'm very much what I would define, and I don't know if this translates over to the UK, but blue collar digital worker, like somebody who is not this, advanced developer, 75 years in college, I'm making $400,000 a year because I can code. It's somebody who has the power to, or the ability to leverage the power of WordPress, put out a good product, work hard for their customer, get paid a valuable price, and satisfy the customer. Just do good work in the digital landscape. I think that's a thing. Okay. I think this is a thing that we can all embrace. So that's my purpose/opinion. And the other reason why I think folks might struggle with marketing is there's tons of information out there. There's tons of knowledge for you to look up, videos to watch, podcasts to listen to, blogs to read. But for me, marketing is a habit. It's just it's not just a tactic, right? So, excuse me. So when I talk to people, I know a lot of friends, or I have a lot of friends that have, WordPress products, WordPress services, SaaS-based businesses. And they're like, I don't do Twitter. I don't do any social media. I don't do email. I don't do blogging. Like they don't do any of these things. Many of them for various reasons, but one is it was just never became a habit for them. It never became a habit for them to broadcast their message or to connect with people out there, right? So it's easy to consume all of the marketing tactics flooding Twitter and podcasts, but the challenging part is to create habits. And I'll hint at some of these ways that you can create habits. Look, one of them right off the rip, I don't know if it's right here. So it doesn't have to be an hour-long podcast. It could be a 5-minute SoundCloud clip that you put together, right? Just using your phone, something like that. It doesn't have to be this full-on, YouTube channel that you have to get all kinds of lights and cameras and production stuff, but it could be just an Instagram story that you put together. It's not a series of blog posts. It could be just a monthly newsletter or even a quarterly newsletter. It doesn't have to be so consuming, and it doesn't always have to be a webinar. It could just be a live stream of you demonstrating your product, your plugin product, or your, one of the key values of your service. So don't let the whole thing overwhelm you. Don't let marketing overwhelm you, because we get hit with all of this knowledge that's out there, which is great. But sometimes we get all this knowledge. We don't do anything with it. We're sort of stunned because it's like, wow, I can do all this stuff. Focus in on taking little bites out of what works for you. So I contemplated putting this slide in. It's really just a representation of, why would you listen to me? Why would you listen to anybody? And So over the course of 12 years, I'm responsible for, at the agency that I used to run, about $2.5 million worth of services sold and about $200,000 worth of products. These are not astonishing numbers. This is over a decade with lots of failures, paying lots of people to work for me and lots of taxes and unemployment and all this other stuff that's included in that. It's a long road, but it can be done, right? It can be done. Great marketing, to me, just like it was in the car industry, just like it was in the agency space, and I still see today in the product space, it's about trust. And that word of mouth is still the most common means of getting business. It's not just which keywords did you put in your SEO, how many blog posts did you pump out today or this week or this month, what's your Instagram follower count, YouTube subscriber counts. It's about developing trust. At least in my opinion. Their great marketing is about trust. When we see a brand, when we hear a name, when we engage with a product, we immediately know that we either trust them or we don't. And if we don't, we have to do the research. And the best research, I don't know about you, but I start to research. Even, I had somebody go to put up a fence in my house, and I started researching people who build fences. And no one, at least in my area, had done a video, had blog posts, had tutorials, like had me understanding what am I paying for. I just got these big numbers thrown at me for fence. I was like, this is just a fence. I felt like people who come to us to buy websites and they're like, this is just a website. Like, tell me, sell me, educate me on why. Build that trust. So diving into some of the more tactful things that you can do, specifically to the WordPress spaces, is do more podcasts, and not host your own podcast, but be on more podcasts if you can. The challenge here is to have the right pitch, tell the right story, and to provide value. So, as Dan mentioned before, I've been doing this for like 7 or 8 years, podcasting, and I have people who just send me one-liners like, when can I be on the show? And then I have other people who send like their virtual assistants my way, and it's, hey, the CEO of XYZ company from this Fortune 5000 catalog wants to be, and then it's like somebody who doesn't even really care. They're just sending assistants out to try to connect with the host of a show. Understand that creating a podcast is a lot of work. So if you want to start a podcast, that's awesome. I 100% recommend it, but just understand it's a lot of work. So it's a lot of work for the host that you're asking, but have the right pitch, provide some value. And this is a unique opportunity in the WordPress space because there are a lot of WordPress podcasts out there. There's tons. Every day somebody's launching one, and that's great. It really unearths a lot of people in the community that stories can be told. And this isn't just products, but for services too, for agencies. I run a local podcast. I live in New England, in fact, just south of Boston. So there's a lot of podcasts in my local area cropping up. I run one and I highlight local entrepreneurs, right? Totally devoid of the Matt Report. Nobody knows me as the Matt Report around here. Another interesting opportunity to connect with is there are a lot of YouTube personalities and tutorial makers, well, again, on YouTube, but in blog posts and review sites that you want to connect with. There are many great channels out there that are always looking for new content. But again, the pitch is it has to be unique. You have to provide some value, and you shouldn't just expect creators to cover your product or service just for the sake of asking. Have some value there. Share their posts a little bit. Really build that trust with them first, maybe before even asking, to be on their show or to have them review your podcast. But definitely particular opportunities in both podcasting and YouTubing in the WordPress world. And I hope that a lot of this stuff eventually branches out into more traditional markets, right? So WordPress is a good size bubble that you can spend a lot of time like focusing your marketing on, but depending on what you sell and what you offer, you might need to branch out eventually. But WordPress is a great place to set that foundation, the WordPress community and the creators in it. And when all else fails, become your own storyteller and build your own audience. This is like the number one thing. This is the only way I know how to do it, is to be my own storyteller, build my own audience, to help others, to share your story, to share their story. I wouldn't be anywhere. I wouldn't literally not be here on this live stream. I wouldn't be working at Pagely. I would have never started anything if I didn't start my podcast. And I only started the podcast because those of you might know a company called 10up in the WordPress space. Jake Goldman, the founder, he used to live near me many, many years ago. And he started his agency the same time I started my agency. And I saw what he could do as an engineer and as a developer and how he could find people. And I was like, there is no way I can do what I literally can't write code like Jake. And I don't know anyone in the WordPress space like Jake. So I started a podcast. It was like it just happened to, like, I was going to do a blog or I was going to do a podcast. And I just happened to do a podcast. And that was that compounded, like you saw before, 12 years of making connections and reaching out to people. And that's how I grew my business, my products, and found new opportunity. Become a champion, help others online, Facebook groups, and more, right? Be that person who's helping as much as possible. Tons and tons of Facebook groups that are out there, Twitter, events like this, like become that champion. You know, you will not only help learn more about your product or learn more about the users, but you can then reinvest that knowledge back into your product. You become a champion helping about Beaver Builder or whatever, and you're in the Beaver Builder group and you're helping tons of people. You can uncover something as a solution and maybe build that into your product or start a whole new product or start a service around it. I've always led with becoming a champion for someone or some cause. For the agencies and the consultants in the room, productize your service. This is an age-old practice of, turning your practice, your agency, into something that into a productized service that somebody can buy. The great thing about productizing it, like maybe educating somebody to build a website. So maybe you sell websites for $5,000 for a complete engagement. Maybe you sell a course for $500. This isn't rocket science. A lot of people have been talking about this, but you can use that as marketing leverage, right? You can offer the course for free. You can offer consultation for free. And that can really help market your client agency abilities. I believe I'm out of time, and I might be right on the mark. Maybe. I don't know. I just want to say thank you. And here's where you can find me at Matt Medeiros, at Pagely, at Matt Report, and youtube.com/plugintut.